is just absolutely bewildering, especially when you look into the greater details. This guy was fired from the FBI for leaking information on the Trump administration. This guy was behind a lot of the major warrants that were spying on the Donald Trump campaign. This guy then was working with Vijaya Gotti one-on-one when it came to censoring people in our political landscape, predominant people who supported the Trump administration. This guy's connected to the Clintons. He's connected to James Comey. He's connected to almost virtually everyone in the political sphere. And Elon Musk didn't even know he was working at Twitter deciding what kind of documents Barry Weiss and Matt Taibbi were getting. What?
That's crazy.
How does that make sense? It doesn't. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely not. And you know what? This is just another great example, too, of just how far the tentacles of our government stretch in every aspect of our reality and of our truth. I mean, going into, again, big tech, which is one of the areas and places where people cast their votes, where they gather their information, where their entire reality is dictated, essentially. You have the FBI here dictating reality, dictating truth, and dictating what we're allowed to see. So, you know, even it's like our own government, right? We install somebody as president who we think is going to change things, but then they have to go through all of these other layers of corruption. And that's what we're seeing right now with Twitter and all the other, you know, people involved with even suppressing the Twitter files.
Saying once you're CIA, you're always CIA. To think that the Federal Bureau of Investigations doesn't have a similar role in our private sector is foolish. So I think it's fair to say that the FBI has infiltrated many big tech social media companies, whether officially or unofficially, and a lot of the times it is them calling the shots here. And prove me wrong, because there's no other way to see this from the plethora of evidence that has been provided to us.
Yeah, I kind of just don't think that the country exists anymore.
I saw you tweet that earlier, too. What do you mean by that?
I mean that the idea of the United States is now this shell. You know, you can see the flag, but even the embassies are flying different flags in some places. Not like flying on the flagpole, but they're putting up like the pride flag and stuff like that. You go to a major city, the attitude, the belief structure is so dramatically different from people outside of cities. It's like it's a clear distinction here. Then you get to the courts. Okay, it's illegal. We call it illegal immigration for a reason. Okay, well, a whole bunch of states just completely ignore that law, right? California, for instance, they call it a sanctuary state. You've got places like I think New York and San Francisco are doing this. Upstate New York, allowing non-citizens to vote. Yeah. Now that these court cases are going through. Look, the southern border is completely porous. Non-citizens are voting. What does that even mean? How is it a vote if people who don't live here can change the way we have to live? Then you have all of the crime. Then you have this. Two things with this as to why I say the U.S. doesn't exist anymore. You know, I was talking about this earlier with some friends. They're like, don't you think? But this stuff's always been happening. And I'm like, yeah, you know, back in the day of J. Edgar Hoover when he's digging up dirt on presidential candidates and stuff. But you see, the FBI, they were everywhere. There was like some unified authoritarian control over this country. Now, not only can we see them doing it, but we see them doing it. You know what I mean? Like, we know they do it, and now we're watching them do it, meaning their control has been completely subverted. So there's illicit activity going on from the federal government to try and control things, which they're failing to control, and then they're being exposed. So not only is there no seemingly functional law enforcement, if you look at what happened with Marjorie Taylor Greene, if you look at what happens with us, if you look at what's happening with police across the country and security in Philadelphia, like you were mentioning, these armed guards outside, the cops can't do anything. The FBI can't do anything. Swattings are happening like crazy to members of Congress. And now we're just sitting back, literally watching in real time the FBI fail to pull off an infiltration.
Well, wow. And I think what we're seeing too, right, in the modern days, if we really take a step back and look at it, is that all of our intelligence agencies have been weaponized against the American people. And then you go to the border, like you talked about, Tim. I've been to the border myself, and I've watched the flood of illegal immigration that happens every single day. I've talked to Border Patrol who say, we're essentially Uber for the illegal immigrants at this point. There's no stop to the flow there. We're essentially aiding and abetting human trafficking at our border. We're aiding and abetting the cartel at this point. The Biden administration might as well be putting money directly in their pockets because they are. So again, you know, the border's an issue, the crime's an issue. And then on top of all of that, our own intelligence agencies are now attacking and, targeting the American citizens. So I completely agree with your sentiment that the United States no longer exists. And it was funny too, because so many on the left were saying, oh my gosh, Donald Trump called. The fact that our own press secretary has the audacity to get up in front of the American people people every single day and lie to us bold-faced. This administration tried to change the definition of recession as we were actively going through it. This entire administration tries to pretend that the economy isn't failing, that inflation isn't at a 40-year high. The fact that our own government is not fearful of the American people and they're willing to lie to us so bold-faced, it really pisses me off. And I think it goes to show that, we don't have the country that we once had. Jack Posobiec always loves to tweet that out, that the America that we once knew no longer exists. And I completely agree with that sentiment, because think about the fact, too, that we're raising an entire generation that thinks that this type of government is normal, that changing the definition of things is normal. I was thinking about the fact that TSA, right? I thought that was a normal thing. I wasn't aware that taking off your shoes, getting frisked by the TSA was not a normal part of modern day society. Think about the fact that Gen Z is going to think that face masks, that government overreach, that the government spying on you, that the government lying to you and redefining our modern day language is just how society has always run.
I'll make a point to the country no longer existing too. There are a lot of people that still believe in the United States, and they're holding to this ideal and this vision. I respect that. I like what America represents. I like the Constitution. But come on, take a look at the Constitution. Take a look at the Bill of Rights. Is the federal government abiding by the Bill of Rights? Let's go through it. The First Amendment. What did we just learn? Okay, well, the FBI, the DHS, DNI are colluding with big tech platforms to censor legitimate legal speech. Major political parties like the DNC, which includes public officials, are actively suppressing speech, and we can see it's happening in California. We can see it from the Missouri lawsuit. That's the First Amendment just gone. Yeah. Second Amendment, I don't even got to talk about that. Come on. Democrats are trying to ban semi-automatic weapons. Third Amendment, I got you there, baby. During COVID, they were mandating that you couldn't evict people, and that meant, and this is hilarious, by the way, that active duty soldiers, military personnel, who are currently living as tenants in property, they could not be evicted. And I got to say that literally violates the Third Amendment. The Third Amendment, of course, most people don't realize is the government can't quarter soldiers in your home. So the argument was actually made. Fourth Amendment? Oh, come on. The Fourth, has that one existed for a long time? NSA lying to Congress, they bulk spying, all of that stuff, tapping the deep sea cables. Come on, those are the first four that are gone. How about the Fifth Amendment? Oh boy, you want to go through this one? January 6th defendants.
Yep.
How long have they been locked up without charge, without trials, in solitary confinement? I get it. The list goes on. There's no right to confront your accuser. There's no speedy trial. Let's talk about the 9th and 10th Amendment. Oh boy, do we got to go there? Look, you've got the fracturing across the board of the Constitution. It's just non-existent. Sorry to say.
When you brought up Trump, I was going to make a joke. I was like, we have a constitution here? But you made the point a lot more clearer by going.